So the title of this lesson is called The Righteous versus the Wicked, right? There is no middle ground. So the Most High always shows us in His scriptures that there is no in between. There is no lukewarm righteous or, lukewarm wicked and all of that. He said it's either you're righteous or you're wicked. Point blank, period. Okay? So now there's definitely, man, a war being waged, as we can say, right? You see it, you go through it every single day. All right? You're the righteous. You're the ones who are keeping the commandments, right? And then you see those who are not keeping the commandments, or who we know as the wicked, because they're the ones that still transgress the Sabbath day, still, do things that are contrary to sound doctrine, all right, or contrary to the law. But we're the ones who we're keeping the commandments, all right, as the Most High has commanded us. We're not making any excuses or anything like that. We're learning the commandments and we're applying them to our everyday life, right? Which makes you a righteous individual if you're applying the commandments correctly to your life. Okay? So now, let's get the origin of this battle between the righteous and the wicked. Let's see if this has an origin to it. Let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 3. And I'm going to read at verse 16, right? And now, so in this chapter, you see that this talks about the fall of Adam, right? And you see that, Eve, she was seduced by the serpent. And you see that man, Adam, his wife, and the serpent, they all received judgments from the Most High. All right, you see Adam, it said, the Most High said that he would no longer be immortal. He'd be subject to sicknesses, diseases. He'd have to, he'd go into bondage and work as as a slave, you know what I mean? So all of those things, man, came upon, Adam, and then you see the judgment of Eve. She'll suffer in her, giving birth to children, have to go through the hardships and the labor, and she had to be subject unto her husband on top of that. All right? She would have to be in absolute and complete obedience unto her husband. Okay? So these were punishments, right? And like I said, the Most High, He basically reiterated that the woman has to remember her place. All right? Her husband is the man in charge. Not another man, her husband, all right? The man that she marries, unless she has a father, okay? Or an older brother and she's not married. So now, and then you see the judgment of the serpent is that he'd be the lowest form of life, all right, upon the face of the earth. Or any man that held that mentality would be the lowest form of life upon the face of the earth in the eyes of the Most High. So then we'll read this, and it says in verse 16, chapter 3 and verse 16, it says, unto the woman he said, let me drop down. I'm going to read verse 15. And it says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Right? So now this is the Most High showing, right, Adam, Eve, and the serpent, right, what's going to happen. So that after He pronounced the judgment of the serpent, the Most High is saying, man, that He's going to put hatred between the woman and between his seed, the serpent seed, and her seed, right? So we know that the woman's seed would be the righteous individuals, and the serpent seed would be those who are wicked, all right? So Satan versus the righteous. Satan's seed versus, the Most High seed, the righteous, right? Because, the Most High is righteous, Satan is wicked. So there would be this battle that would occur, man, throughout the ages, all right? And as we can see, this has always happened. So as the Lord said, man, the Lord put that hostility or that hatred between the serpent, which is the wicked, and the woman, which is the righteous seed. So we know that, the children of Israel, of course, do come from, the the woman, all right, which is Eve, all right. Adam is her husband, or Adam carried seed, but she would have children, all right. And it says, according, to the prophecy, Christ will crush the wicked. So you'll find out later on, man, as you read the book of Revelations, Christ will come and bring judgment upon the entire face of the earth, okay? Which leads me to, let's go to the book of Matthew chapter 25, and this will lead me to, the understanding of the chapter that we're going to be going into. Matthew chapter 25, and I'm going to start at verse 31. And it says, and when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, right? So now this is speaking about the second coming of our Lord and Savior, all right, Yahushua Mashiach, or Jesus Christ in English. So this, and he says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all his holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, right? So now, let's get a little understanding about what we're about to go into here, right? So we're getting the understanding of what Christ is giving. He's speaking to us in parables. So now, what is a parable? Well, I have a definition here that will, give us a little understanding on what a parable actually is, so that it'll help you in your understanding. And it says, a parable, a short story that teaches a moral or spiritual lesson. Okay? So that's what a parable is. All right? So then you can also go into like likenesses and a likeness or a similitude, which is also referring to the same thing, and it's just showing you that Christ is using examples, man, in our everyday life to give us a spiritual understanding, man, of a moral lesson. All right, that we need to know and understand. So now I'm going to go into the definition of allegory. It says, an allegory, a story which in the characters and events are symbols that stand for ideas about human life or for a political or historical situation, right? So now as we read, you're going to see that Christ does go into history, and he does go into future events that will occur, right? But he puts them all in parables. So those who will receive it those who understand, who can relate, they'll receive it and they'll understand what he's saying. But those that have no idea what he's talking about, they're just not going to understand. And this is going to pass right over their head. But as Christ said, my sheep hear my voice. And we'll get that scripture later on. Right? So now let's go back to Matthew chapter 25. Let's start at verse 31. Okay, so we understand what a parable is and what an allegory is. All right, parable is a short story which teaches a moral or spiritual lesson. Allegory is a story which the characters and events are symbols that stand for ideas about human life. All right, political or historical situations. So now let's read. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. Okay. So now, let's get some precepts for that. So he said he's going to come back with his holy angels. All right. So now let's go to the book of Jude. Jude is in the New Testament, and it's right before Revelations. Let's get some understanding what he's talking about when he says he's going to come back with his holy angels. Jude 14. All right, 14 and verse 15. Okay. And it says, and Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all and to convince all that are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Right? So this is what the second coming of Christ is going to consist of. He's going to come back with his holy angels with him. All right? He comes with the tens of thousands of his saints, right? And his 144,000, right? To do what? To execute judgment upon the earth. Okay? So now it says, and then it goes back to say, and he shall sit upon the throne of his glory. Okay? So now let's get some understanding. Let's get some more. Let's go to the book of Isaiah chapter 9, and let's read verse 7. So this is dealing with the second coming of Christ. So Christ is speaking about his second appearance, all right, after his first appearance. Isaiah chapter 9, and I will read verse 7, and it says, I'll read verse 6. For unto a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth forever, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So as we can see, this is talking about Christ, man. And when he comes, he's going to establish his government, right? And remember, he said he's going to sit upon the throne of David, all right. And of his kingdom, it's not going to be any end, okay. So he's going to establish it. He's going to make sure that justice and judgment is upheld, all right, forever. So now, so this is talking about Christ's government shall not have an end to it. So now this is this is the second coming of the Son of Man. Let's read on. So Matthew chapter 25, let's get verse 32. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divided his sheep from the goats. So now, let's get some understanding on this verse 32, because this will throw many people off. And that's what that says. See, he's going to come and he's going to gather all nations, brother. All nations. That's talking about everybody, the white man, the Chinese, the Arab. He's going to gather all nations. Okay. All right. You could think that. Yeah, that's what it says here in its context. It's talking about all nations, right? But now we have to rightly divide the word. This is where your reading and your historical information is going to come in, brother. Now I'm going to tell you something, because it's not talking about all nations here. It's talking about a particular people that is scattered amongst all nations. All right? So now, all nations gathered, all nations that is being spoken about here are the Israelites that are scattered amongst all nations. All right? And he's talking, the Most High is talking, and Christ is talking about how he's going to divide the righteous Israelites, right, from the wicked Israelites. All right? And we're going to go precept upon precept, man, to get some understanding, right? So now he says, and him shall, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divided his sheep from the goats. All right, so let's get some understanding, man, on the shepherd, the aspect of the shepherd, right? He said as a shepherd. Let's find out who the shepherd is, all right? Some people may not think this is talking about Christ. Well, we'll find out right now. Let's go to the book of St. John chapter 10. St. John chapter 10, and I'm going to read the verses. I'm going to start at verse 1. And he says, Verily I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. Right? So, if you try to go to the Most High, man, any other way, it's not going to happen. Why? Because, like Christ said, you try to go another way, man, and reach the Most High, it's not going to happen. thinking that you can get to the kingdom in any other way. It's not going to happen. He said, the same as a thief and a robber. He said, but he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep, right? To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out, right? He says, and when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. So now that's why he said, man, he said, to him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his sheep by name, and leadeth them out. So remember, Christ said what? And we're gonna read. He said, my sheep hear my voice. And it says, a stranger will they not hear. I'm in verse 5. A stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. So we're talking about those false prophets too. So Christ said, man, my sheep hear my voice. He said they already know. All right, so this was a parable in which Christ was speaking in. All right, so now, staying in St. John, let's drop down and read verse 11. Verse 11, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for his sheep. So Christ said he is the good shepherd. He said, for a good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. So what did Christ do? He gave his life for his sheep. Who are the sheep? The sheep are the children of Israel. He said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you read in the book of Matthew, chapter 15 and verse 24, as he told the Canaanite woman, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay? So now let's read on. But he that is an hireling and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catches them, and scattereth the sheep. Right? So now let's get some understanding about this real quick. All right? Christ says something very profound here. He's like, that wolf cometh, and he scattereth the sheep, just to keep it short. So now let's go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 34, to see who Christ is talking about. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 34, and we'll start at verse 5. And it reads, hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. And it reads, and they were scattered because there was no shepherd. Well, you know what? I'll read up verse 4. It says, the disease have ye not strengthened, neither. I'll read verse 1. So it says, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. So he's talking about the leaders of Israel, all right, the rulers of the people. Prophesy and say unto them, thus saith the Lord God unto the shepherds, woe be unto the shepherds of Israel that do not feed them, that do feed themselves. Should not the shepherd feed the flock? Right, so now remember what Christ said. You know, any man that try to go up any other way, the same as a thief and a robber, right? So these are the rulers of our people, and you see it today, man, what they're doing to the children of Israel now, right? They take advantage of the stupidity of the flock, right? And they bleed them dry and do what? They feed themselves, right? They fatten their own pockets. Okay, so this is the same thing that have been occurring in Israel for generations. This has always been occurring, right? And you see that this is an example right here. So just how it was happening in the time of Christ, it was happening here in the time during Ezekiel as well.